My boyfriend's mom invited me to a family party. I didn't realize why until I arrived. I realized something was wrong the moment I walked into the venue and felt underdressed. Everyone else looked polished. Cocktail dresses, heels, button-downs, while I stood there in black pants and a plain white shirt, suddenly wishing I'd stayed home. My name's Anna, I'm 28, and I'd been dating Mark for just over a year. I'd never felt close to his family. Whenever I visited their house, I felt invisible, like I was there physically, but not really acknowledged. Mark always said I was overthinking it. "They're just quiet," he'd tell me. "Don't be so sensitive." So when Mark's mom, Linda, messaged me for the first time ever, 3 days before a family party, I was honestly shocked. She invited me personally, told me what to wear, even sounded warm. I was embarrassingly happy about it. I remember texting Mark right away, smiling at my phone, thinking, maybe this is finally it. Maybe I'm being accepted. I showed up early, around 2 p.m., even though the party wasn't supposed to start until 4. Linda met me at the door, but instead of welcoming me in, she immediately guided me toward the back where the food was laid out. She handed me a tray and said, "You can help here." I froze for a second. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she just needs help for now, I thought. But then guests started arriving, and I was the one pouring drinks, refilling plates, standing behind the table like staff. Someone even joked, "Oh, are you working with the catering?" I laughed weakly. Inside, my chest felt tight. Mark wasn't there. I tried calling him, but my phone was taken from me, so it wouldn't get in the way. By the time I finally saw him, around 6, I was exhausted, my feet aching, still serving food. I pulled him aside and asked quietly if he knew his mom had asked me to help like this. He looked uncomfortable and said, "Don't make a scene. I didn't tell her to do that. What do you want me to do?" That was it. No concern, no defense. He walked away and we didn't really talk again. When the party ended, Mark left early. I stayed behind because they were still packing up. Before I left, Linda thanked me and handed me some cash. She even apologized, saying she assumed I'd be fine helping because I'd worked fast food before, and that she'd messaged me last minute anyway. I nodded, took the money, said thank you. That hurt more than anything. Mark and I talked later. We tried to fix things, but he never really acknowledged how humiliating that day was for me, how being invited as a guest and treated like hired help crossed a line. Eventually, I had to ask myself a hard question. Is it worth staying with someone who won't stand up for me, especially when it matters most? I didn't leave angry. I didn't leave dramatically. I just left knowing I deserved more than quiet disrespect dressed up as family. Next part on my playlists. A few days after the party, Mark came over like nothing had happened. He sat on my couch, scrolling on his phone, asking what we were going to eat for dinner. I told him we needed to talk. He sighed, not loudly, just enough to let me know he already felt inconvenienced. That alone told me a lot. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him. I just explained how that day felt from my side, how I'd shown up thinking I was a guest, how I ended up serving drinks for hours, how humiliating it was to be mistaken for hired help while he was nowhere to be found. He shook his head and said, "You're still stuck on that?" That was the moment something in me settled. I asked him why he didn't step in, why he didn't say anything when his mother handed me a tray, why he left early and didn't check on me at all. He said, "I didn't tell her to do that. What did you want me to do? Argue with my mom in front of everyone?" I told him I wasn't asking him to argue. I was asking him to notice, to protect me from being embarrassed, to choose respect. He leaned back and said, "You know how my family is. You could have just said no." I went quiet after that. Not because I didn't have a response, but because I finally understood the problem. In his mind, it was my responsibility to set boundaries with his family. My responsibility to absorb the discomfort. My responsibility to not make things awkward. And his responsibility? Apparently nothing. I looked at him and realized this wasn't about one party. This was about how often I'd been told to adjust, to be patient, to not take things personally, while no one ever adjusted for me. I didn't break up with him that night. I still gave him a second chance. I told myself people don't change overnight, and that maybe now that I'd explained everything clearly, he'd be more aware. Mark promised he'd do better. He said he understood. He even apologized. Not deeply, but enough for me to believe him. For a few weeks, things felt lighter. He checked in more. He stood closer to me at gatherings. I let myself relax again. Then his mom reached out. This time, it wasn't an invitation. It was a message asking if I could help with a few small things at another family event. "Just errands," she said, "picking things up, helping things run smoothly." Mark showed me the message and said, "It's nothing big. She trusts you. That word, trusts, should have felt good. Instead, my stomach tightened, but I agreed. I told myself I wouldn't overthink it. I told myself this was normal. The day of the event was busy from the start. I was running back and forth, checking lists, helping guests, trying to keep things moving. I wanted everything to go smoothly. Maybe too much. I made a mistake, a small one. I mixed up the order of drinks, and for a moment, things stalled. Before I could fix it, Mark stepped in. Not beside me, in front of me. He laughed, loud enough for people nearby to hear, and said, "See, this is why I told you to double-check. You always rush." A few people looked over. Someone smiled awkwardly. Someone else looked away. I felt my face burn. I apologized quickly and tried to fix it, but my hands were shaking. Mark didn't lower his voice. He kept correcting me, pointing things out, treating me like I was careless instead of overwhelmed. And the worst part wasn't the mistake. It was realizing how comfortable he was humiliating me. Not pulling me aside, not asking if I was okay, just correcting me publicly, like I was staff who needed to be managed. I caught his mom watching from across the room. She didn't say anything. She didn't stop him. I stood there, surrounded by people, feeling smaller by the second, and thought, this is what my second chance looks like. That's when the tension really set in. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy. The kind that sits in your chest and refuses to go away. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt done. The event ended the way these things always do. People laughing, thanking the hosts, acting like nothing uncomfortable had happened. I helped clean up in silence. Mark didn't look at me. No apology, no check-in, just distance, like I'd embarrassed him. The car ride home was worse than the event itself. I stared out the window while he drove, the silence thick enough to feel physical. Halfway home, I finally said, "You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." He exhaled sharply and said, "I was fixing the situation." "No," I replied. My voice surprised me. It was steady. "You were correcting me. There's a difference." He scoffed. "You made a mistake. It wasn't a big deal." "That's not the point," I said. "The point is you chose to embarrass me instead of support me." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You're being dramatic again." That word, again, landed harder than anything else. When we got home, I didn't invite him inside. We stood by the car, the night air cool and quiet, like the world didn't care what we were about to say. I told him I felt used, that I felt like every time his family needed help, I was convenient, and every time I needed respect, I was too sensitive. He crossed his arms and said, "My mom was already stressed. I didn't want more issues." I looked at him and realized something painful and simple. I was never part of the equation. Keeping peace mattered more than protecting me. His comfort mattered more than my dignity. And as long as I stayed quiet and helpful, everything worked. For everyone except me. "I gave you a second chance because I thought you'd stand up for me this time," I said. "Instead, you showed me exactly where I stand." He didn't argue, he didn't apologize, he just said, "So what, you're done?" I nodded, not angrily, not crying, just certain. "Yeah," I said, "I'm done." He drove away without another word. I went inside, sat on my couch, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I finally stopped pretending it was my job to earn basic respect. I wish I could say I walked away for good after that. I didn't. I forgave him again. And yes, looking back, that's the part I struggle with the most. Not because I didn't know better, but because I wanted things to finally be different so badly that I ignored what I already knew. Mark apologized this time, more seriously. He said the right things. He promised it wouldn't happen again. I told myself people deserve chances, and that maybe love meant patience. Then his mom invited me to her birthday. The message sounded different, warmer, clearer. She said she hoped I could come as a guest. She even added a smiley face. I stared at my phone for a long time before replying yes. I dressed up carefully that day. Nothing flashy, just nice enough to feel confident. I remember standing in front of the mirror thinking, this is just a birthday. I'm allowed to enjoy it. The moment I arrived, something felt off. Before I could even sit down, Linda handed me a list. Drinks, plates, refills. "You know how these things go," she said casually, already turning away. I stood there, list in hand, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself this was the last time. I served for over an hour. When I finally slowed down, Linda noticed. She walked straight toward me, her smile gone, her voice sharp enough to cut through the room. She looked at me and said loudly, "Honestly, I don't know why my son stays with you. You're too slow, too soft. You're a stupid girlfriend who doesn't even know her place." The room went quiet. I felt heat rush to my face, my hands trembling as if my body was trying to leave before my mind caught up. I glanced at Mark. He didn't say a word. Linda continued, her tone cold and final. You don't deserve him. Any woman with sense would know better. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to argue. I wanted Mark to step in. He didn't. So I stood there, humiliated. Not because of what she said, but because I finally understood something I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't bad timing. This wasn't me being sensitive. This was who they were. And this was who I became when I stayed. I quietly put the tray down. No speech, no scene. I just walked out. And this time, I didn't forgive anyone. I didn't make it to my car. Halfway down the driveway, I stopped. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something finally settling into place. I realized that if I left quietly again, this would just become another story I tried to explain away later. So I turned around. When I walked back inside, conversations were still low and awkward, people pretending nothing had happened. Linda was near the table, talking to a few relatives. Mark stood beside her, eyes glued to his phone. I said his name, not loudly, just enough. Mark. He looked up, surprised. Everyone else slowly followed. I need to say something, I said. My voice wasn't raised, but it didn't waver either. And I'm going to say it once. The room went completely silent. I looked at Linda first. You invited me today as a guest. I dressed up. I showed up with respect. And once again, you treated me like unpaid help. She opened her mouth, but I didn't stop. And then you humiliated me, publicly. You called me stupid. You told me I didn't deserve your son. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. Then I turned to Mark. And you, I said, meeting his eyes, stood there and let it happen. Again. His face flushed. This isn't the time. No, I said calmly, this is exactly the time. I took a breath. I kept forgiving you because you kept promising things would change. But tonight showed me something very clear. I gestured lightly around the room. This isn't love. This is a pattern. And I've been the easiest person here to disrespect because I kept staying. Linda scoffed. You're being dramatic. I nodded once. That's fine. You can call it whatever you want. Then I looked back at Mark. But I'm done being embarrassed so other people can stay comfortable. I reached down, took off the bracelet Mark had given me months ago, and placed it on the table. The sound it made felt louder than anything I'd said. I'm not your girlfriend anymore, I said, and I won't be your family's convenience. No yelling, no insults, just truth. I turned and walked out, my legs shaking but my chest lighter than it had been in years. Behind me, I heard murmurs start up. Questions, discomfort, the kind of noise that only comes after something honest has been said out loud. I didn't look back. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt finished. I didn't even make it home before my phone started vibrating. At first, it was Mark. Missed calls, one after another. I let them ring while I drove, my hand steady on the wheel, my heart surprisingly calm. Then the texts came. You embarrassed my family? Why would you do that in front of everyone? You could have talked to me privately. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a minute before replying. I was humiliated publicly. I responded publicly. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. My mom didn't mean it like that. She was stressed. You took it too personally. I stared at the screen, realizing how familiar those words felt. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just replied, this is exactly why I'm done. That's when the tone shifted. The call started again, back to back this time. When I didn't answer, voicemails came through. You're overreacting. You always do this when things get uncomfortable. Just come back and we'll talk. Then, hours later, another message. I didn't think you'd actually leave. That one hurt more than the rest. Later that night, a message came from a number I didn't recognize. It was Linda. You made yourself look ridiculous today. No one will want someone who causes scenes like that. I read it once, then twice, then I deleted it without replying. Around midnight, Mark called again. I answered, not because I wanted closure, but because I wanted certainty. His voice was quieter this time. I didn't handle it well, he said. I should have said something. I waited. But you didn't have to end things like that, he added. You put me in a position. I closed my eyes. I've been in that position for over a year, I said. You just noticed because tonight it was you. He didn't respond. After that, the messages slowed. Regret crept in between the blame. I miss you already. I never thought my mom would go that far. Can we just talk tomorrow? I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked the number. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. No replaying conversations, no rehearsing apologies that weren't mine to make. Just silence. And for the first time, it felt like peace was finally louder than regret. I thought it was over. The next day, I was at a cafe near my apartment, trying to feel normal again, when I heard my name. I looked up and saw Mark standing near the door, disheveled, eyes red, loud enough that people were already staring. "Anna, please," he said, walking toward my table. "We need to talk." I stayed seated. My coffee was still warm in my hands. I didn't move. "This isn't the place," I said quietly. "That's what you said last time," he snapped, then immediately softened. "I messed up. I know I did. I should have protected you." People were watching now. A barista paused mid-step. Someone near us pulled out their phone. Mark dropped his voice, but not his desperation. "My mom went too far. I talked to her. She didn't mean it." I shook my head. She said exactly what she meant. He crouched beside my table. "Please don't do this. We can fix it. I'll set boundaries, I promise." I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing but distance. "You promised that before," I said. Calm, clear, and every time I paid the price for believing you. His voice cracked. "I need you." "That's the problem," I replied. "You needed someone who would tolerate disrespect. I'm not her anymore." He reached for my hand. I gently pulled it back. People were openly staring now. The silence felt heavier than shouting. "Please," he said again, louder this time. "Don't leave me like this." I stood up slowly, not rushed, not angry. "I'm not leaving you," I said. "I already left." I placed a few bills on the table, nodded politely to the barista, and walked out while he stayed there, kneeling, exposed, finally feeling what I'd felt for years. I didn't look back. Some endings don't need closure. They need distance. Months later, I walked into a small art gallery downtown, a cup of coffee in hand, wearing something I actually liked, not something I thought would make anyone else comfortable. I smiled at the quiet hum of people appreciating their own lives, their own choices. No one was expecting me to serve them. No one was judging my every move. I hadn't thought about Mark or his mother for weeks. Not because I didn't remember, they were a lesson, but because I had finally stopped carrying their opinions like they were my own. I realized something simple. The freedom to choose myself every single day was worth more than any apology, any excuse, or any public display of regret. I sipped my coffee, glanced at the sunlight through the gallery window, and thought, I didn't just leave them behind. I left the version of me that let them control my worth. And I've never felt lighter. Years later, I was in a relationship again. Not because I was looking for one, but because this time, nothing felt heavy. Alex never raised his voice at me, never corrected me in front of others, never made me feel like I had to prove I belonged beside him. The biggest difference wasn't what he did. It was what never happened. I was never asked to help out without being asked. Never spoken over. Never laughed at to keep someone else comfortable. One day, we were at a small family gathering of his. Someone handed him a stack of plates and said, "Can you help for a second?" He took them without hesitation and glanced back at me like it never even crossed his mind that it should be my job. That was the moment I understood. Healthy love doesn't feel impressive. It feels quiet. It feels normal. And I finally knew that nothing was ever wrong with me. The end. Thank you for watching. Please hit subscribe and like if you like these video.